Welcome back. I hope you've done the playground assignment, sorry, classwork for our introduction to JavaScript. So you play and interact with the console. If you have done that, well done. You've written your first script and then you're a developer. Tap yourself in the back. So without further ado, we'll go a little bit further into our introduction to JavaScript. Now we're going to talk about JavaScript functions. Like I said, functions in JavaScript is the same thing as functions in other computer language. The difference is the syntax and the syntax, the spellings, and how it is being presented. So a function is a block of code, a block of reusable code. Mark that word, reusable code that performs a specific task or calculates a value. So like in this example we have here, you can see a simple calculation. I talked about calculator earlier on when we talk about a plus length times breadth or length plus breadth or something like that. So you can see that that function you keep on using it. That's why in your calculator, when you anytime you go and you punch the keys, and it will give you what you've requested it, because these functions has been written and coded in the chip and inserted into the calculator. And then even down to our phones, there are different functions there. When you click on menu button, it comes out. It was a function that enabled that when the user clicks on this thing should happen. And anytime you do that, that's why I said it's reusable. Anytime you click on your menu icon, it toggles your menu. You click it back, it goes off. So JavaScript functions can take inputs, they are called parameters, and return output. So these are like the two form of functions. These are functions being written in the JavaScript. There are of two types. We have the basic function declaration and function expression. So we have this particular first type. We have parameters. You can see that it takes a value a and b and returns a plus b. So if you add any value, like you call this thing add 2 3, it will now do this called return function and add like 2 plus 3 and it gives you 5. So no matter where in your code, in as much as you've called this, it's going to give you that file. Let's see if we can just do a quick example about it. Let's see what we can do with it. So let's try to replicate that. So we have something like we have length and breadth. So let's just call this, let's create a function and call it function area of what? Rectangle. So we have length times breadth. So you can see this L is usually stands for length. You call this one breadth. So it's a variable. This is a way of declaring variable in a function. So you can see that the function has the function, the name of the function is also a variable. You can see anytime I want to call on this function now, I can easily call area of rectangle and I'm going to get this everything in this block of code. I'll get everything in this block of code. So now what this does is to print this and this. So if I should come here and say uh, now remember I have length here, length and breadth. So I can now say area of triangle. Let's just go with the figures first. Let's do the two. 6 and 98. So let's say we have an area of a triangle as this and this. So this length is what is here already. We've declared the variable here already. We've declared the variable here already. And this breadth, we've declared the variable here already. But for this, we are not declaring, we are just manually putting it, just like your functions. So if I should go to the browser and let's look at it. So you see that here I'm getting 150, here I'm getting 580. So that's a typical example of how we use functions. This can also be written as this. Let's say, because so in JavaScript we have ESCs. At the time there was kind of a rebranding in JavaScript. So instead of this way of writing, let me just put two. Instead of this way of writing um, function area of rectangle, you can actually do something like this. Say, okay, function. Let's just have this. Let's have this, and so we can have anything you want to put here. Hmm. Let's do this. Let's copy this and put it here. Let's comment all these other ones. So you would see now that you just have 150 here. Why? Because this is what I'm doing. But if I should comment this, you're not going to see anything. Why? Because this function here, I've not called this function. So if I want this thing to work, oh sorry, console.log this. Sorry, my bad. Let's copy this and keep it here. So with this, if we run this, we can't read it since we need to look at it in the browser. We can To work with the browser, we need to add it in our console. So to read this, I can now call this function. Let's call the function area area of rectangle 2. So this is how you call a function. You can see this is the action that calls the function, that tells the system that this is a function. It differentiates this from this, all these variables. So when I do this, you see that I'm getting the answer here now because this function is currently running. Unlike these other ones that I have not called. So for you to run this function, so you can see different ways of writing function with a parameter, without a parameter, with a parameter. You also have declaring the function like this function and the name of the function and this like that. Then you also have just cause, yeah, something like this. So these are two different ways, basic way of writing our functions. So if so we have now let's talk about event handling. So what is event handling in JavaScript? So there's something called the document JavaScript DOM. DOM is usually called document object model. So document object model, which is the DOM, is a programming interface for web documents. It represents the structure. It represents the structure of a web page, allowing you to interact with and manipulate the HTML content of a web page. The document object model is a programming interface, so it's more like a representation of the web page from your document, from the head to the body, so that you can access them from the JavaScript. So that is what document object model means. So You have the DOM represents the web page element as a tree-like structure in an object, with each element as a node in the tree. The structure can be modified using JavaScript to dynamically update the web page's content and behavior. So why do you need to know about DOM? What you use your JavaScript to do is to manipulate your HTML content, to manipulate your HTML files from the head, change your title, change your element, add, subtract, anything you want to do. But to enable to in a bit to do that, you need to understand how the page is being structured. So for the page to be structured, you need to know the format from the document down to, I think we have a visual representation here. So we have document, which is like the body, your document, your HTML document, the whole of the windows. Yes, then you have the root element, you have which is HTML. You can see this follows what we have on our HTML tags. So you have your HTML file, and inside that document you can access the head of the body, your title, you can access the body, you can access any element inside that particular HTML file. So if I should, let's say for example, let's go to our playground a little bit. So for example, I let's just console.log document. Let's see what comes up. Console.log documents. Let's see. Let's see what comes out of it. So now you can see now inside the document, I can see everything about the web page. Everything about the web page from the URL. You can see this thing now. I can access it from here. You can see the location. Location has to do with the URL. You can see what is on the screen there. Yeah, it's the same thing with this place. I can access the host name, the protocol. I can access. You can see the URL. I can access the you can see the active elements. You can see all meta tags from the head down. You can see everything about the web page. So this is document you are trying to access. So let's not be bothered about these long things here. But what I want you to focus on now is the fact that we can access the whole of the body. We can see the system. We can see how the screen looks like. We can see how um, the page is being structured. So having done that, yeah, you can see it here also. This is our next slide. So you can see that uh HTML document, it comes like this. You see the HTML, your head, the body, and you can see how the JavaScript can manipulate them. So the question you ask yourself is, how do you get this element? How do I access this element? How do I get this body, this div, this class, or this attribute, or this title? That's the question you need to ask yourself, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So to access these documents, these objects, there are procedures and the guidelines and the rules to follow. Basically, you can, okay, we'll talk about how to access the DOM element. You can access the DOM elements using JavaScript by selecting them with various methods. So there are many methods. There are many ways to access a particular document. So to get just this heading H1, or to get this div tag, you have like different ways of getting it. You can use The basic one and the common one is usually get element by ID. You can get element by your attribute called ID. You can get element by attribute called class name. You can get element by query selector, and there are other ones, there are many other ones. But for now, we'll focus on get element by ID and query selector. Those are the two we'll focus on in the course of our class. Then once you have selected an element, you can manipulate its properties, attributes, and content using JavaScript. So this is where the interactiveness of your web page comes in. You use JavaScript to do virtually many things. Your toggle button in your screen, your different sliders are moved like carousel, like different sliders with different images, move, slide. All those things have been done with JavaScript. Your pop-up, when you click on see more, it opens more content. See less, you close. You see something like what do you call it? All those counter you see, those games, your games and some interactiveness you see on the script on the screen when you are working, or sorry, when you are browsing or surfing the net, down to your forms. When you are submitting form, you submit form, they'll tell you that year must be filled before you can submit the form. Those things have been done and can be done with JavaScript in the front end there. So there are some common mistakes that we may make, and we call I call them debugging basics, because while you are working, or while we'll be working with JavaScript, sometimes, in fact not sometimes, you are bound to make mistakes. You are bound to get some, this thing is not working on my screen, or why or how. You can see the last week while I was talking about CSS, I mistakenly wrote style instead of styles. Like I omitted an S in my HTML file, and it did not work in my code. I was trying to where is the why is my style is not coming up? And I realized that I didn't put the S. I just added style dot CSS, and my HTML could not find that. So similarly, as common as a dot or a semicolon, or as common as even just spelling a wrong name or referring to a variable wrongly, your code is not going to work. So a common way to debug your code in case it's not working, you have a console. We've been playing with console.log. Then let's say particular variable is not working. You can console.log it and check how is the browser reading this, because anything you see in your console, meaning the browser can see it. So maybe you did a particular task or implementation, and it wasn't showing on your screen. You can as well console.log that particular function or variable to see if it's actually coming up on the screen first of all, before you would, okay, and you can go ahead and know where the issue is coming from. Another debugging skill we need to play with is using Chrome Dev Tools. You can see that I've been going on my Chrome, I click on inspect elements and click on Chromes. You can see how I sometimes you can inspect elements. Let's just go a little bit. You can see here, like, can click here, click about me. You see, I can see how my elements are being arranged on my screen. Same with console. I can see different things about my page also on the in the console. Then you have sorry, you have common mistakes you make. Typos, you can misspell something, you can have a wrong case. So we'll talk about naming variables while we'll be doing a practice, when we'll be in the playground. We'll talk about how you name variables so that you won't make mistake and having some wrong case, either uppercase or lowercase. Then missing semicolon, so you can mistakenly just forget to add a semicolon to a particular element, and it won't come up on the screen. These are just basic mistakes or debugging basics you need to have while you're working, so that in case you have having one or two issues, it will be easy for you to um, debug. When you hear the word debug, is to find, like, debug, look for where an error or a particular issue is coming up from. So having said that, let's just go to our web page. Let's play a little with our DOM.